Ricki Burke. I run a cybersecurity recruitment company. I've been doing this for 5.5 years. I do a lot of stuff in this space. I don't know how I got into it, to be honest. Like I mentioned earlier about going to meetups and stuff, and it's just grown and grown and grown. And now I'm super lucky where I get to do so many cool things. And it's really nice because I get asked to do them and I never really say no. So much to my wife's frustration, I end up taking on too much. But it means that I get to help, and that's what I love doing. So I'm very particularly passionate about certain things, and I don't like to bullshit. So I won't sugarcoat stuff to people because I think raising awareness is really important, especially if people aren't aware they need help yet. But the important thing after that is empowering people with information to actually go and do something as well. So I've spoken and got involved in a lot of cons, fortunately not just Australia now, but also New Zealand and the US. Self-promotion, Hacking and Security podcast, in all honesty, haven't published an episode in about a year or so, but for anyone who wants to get into the industry or learn about other areas of the industry, there's some really cool talks on there. So basically, on the podcast, we have a different person from essentially talking about their journey, like we have done today to us, but more podcast form, but their journey into security, and it really just breaks down how many different pathways there are into this space, then also the varied roles in the industry and what people actually do in the job, because it can be confusing. There's, cyber's just not one thing. There's a lot of areas within the industry, a lot of skill sets that make it up. But any advice we can learn some stuff to help you towards that will help you move forward. So we're going to cover two things. It was meant as a resume review thing, because last BSides I did do resume reviews, but I did that on a one-on-one basis, whereas hopefully we can help a few more people rather than just 16 people across 2 days. It's not just about CVs, it's about CVs and then what do we actually do with them. It's then the idea is to get a job. So giving you some advice around what you can do to actually then help yourself moving forward. I've seen a lot of CVs in my lifetime. This is an approximate number, but 50,000 plus CVs. LinkedIn even more so, and it's helpful because I can identify something quickly, and the reality is, and I will talk about it, but essentially you'll scan stuff very quickly. You know what you're looking for, which is why there's a lot of things in this this talk where there's some advice around what to do or what not to do. So why do resumes exist in the first place? Basically gatekeeping. They are a pain in the ass. No one likes resumes. No one likes building them, no one likes writing them, no one likes updating them, no one likes seeing them. It's just this really weird situation that we're in. I feel like we are moving away, and we'll get to a point at some point where they're not as relevant as what they are. Until that happens, we're stuck doing the same thing that we've been doing for many, many years now. So this is why we have resumes. Your application goes into this funnel/black hole. It gets identified or reviewed by HR, talent acquisition, or recruiters. Now the trouble is, it's being reviewed by people that may or may not know what they're looking for. So it's a really crappy thing where maybe you have all the potential in the world, or maybe you have the skills, but you don't have the job title. And because the HR person doesn't actually know what they're looking for, it gets missed. Whereas the hiring manager, of course they know what they're looking for, at least most of the time. Whereas I'm very fortunate with our customers, we work directly generally with the hiring managers as our process, and they can identify potential, not just someone who's doing the role. So it's really easy to see that you have this particular role, you know that in this role there's a few sort of skill sets needed, and someone has those skills. Maybe they don't have the job title yet. Maybe they're performing security tasks, but they're not in a security role. And that's where there's a breakdown. So unless you've got enough of the keywords, lazy recruitment stuff, that basically you won't meet the HR filter. And it's a real bullshit process, to be honest. And it is what it is, which is why I talk about more proactive ways of sort of helping yourself, not just relying on go to a website, apply, fill in a bunch of information, and then you never hear back, or you're one of hundreds of people doing the same sort of thing. So, as mentioned, no one likes resumes. So, what can we do to help ourselves? One thing is not this. So this is your standard situation. I'm in a job, I'm open to a new job, I'm just going to update my CV, is the usual phrase someone says. So this is the same CV someone's had for 5, 10, 15 years. Okay, I'm just going to put my new stuff on top of that. And this is how we end up with 5, 10 pages of resumes sometimes. What enough people don't do is actually take a step back and think about, well, what are the skills needed in the new job that I want? Because something you did 10 years ago probably isn't that relevant to the job that you want tomorrow. Or if information or experiences are relevant, at least highlight the particular ones. So for me, it's a pain in the ass. But basically, if I was going for a new role and I had to apply with a resume, I'll be starting a new one. Again, no one wants to do it, but if you want to help yourself, you need any advantage possible. So, it's a really dry topic, resumes, honestly. It just is what it is. So question time. Out of interest, raise of hands, when was the last time you applied for a role and you did update your resume, in terms of brand new resume? How good are you guys? Sorry, how good are you folks? Okay, I'm impressed. So that's cool. Now, for me, going through lots of resumes in my history, this is what the standard situation is. 4 to 6 pages, Word template. Except for your good selves, normally people don't actually create a new resume. And this thing really kills me. People don't talk about what they did, they talk about it literally reads like they copied and pasted the job description and put it into their resume. So when we look at certain types of roles, a sysadmin or a developer or whatever it is, generally we know what the role entails. You could have the same role at three or four different companies. The thing that makes you stand out is what you did in that role. So what outcomes did you achieve? What difference did you make? So you don't need to list the same stuff that would be in a job advert. So have a summary, but essentially we'll talk about it in further detail, but it's the achievements that you actually made. Where did you actually make a difference? And again, it's that thing of the CV has been added to rather than created. Out of interest, what's the consensus? How long should a CV be?
I got a piece of advice which was if you're only starting out, it shouldn't be more than 2 pages. You don't deserve anything more.
Yeah, so I heard that yesterday. It's fair. Well, the reality is, what do you have to show?
Once you go to PhD, there's a lot of research. Yeah, that's what I got told. So.
Yeah. Less is more. The reality is, I'm not going to jump on my slides. I'll go through it. Again, it's a dry topic. People don't want to read them. You don't need long CVs. I have my personal opinion because of the experience I have, the conversations I have with hiring managers. But I've chucked it out on LinkedIn recently, just asking hiring managers how long should a resume be. And okay, cool. So there we go. So the strong consensus is 1 to 2 pages. And really good feedback that a CISO in a very local company said to me once was, he's got 20 plus years experience and his resume is 2 pages. If he can do that, then why the hell can't other people? And that's the thing, you don't have to list everything you've ever done. If you're targeted with your approach, then you're choosing certain experiences or outcomes or things that are relevant to the role you want to apply for. You don't need a long resume. So going back to that, yeah. So apparently, I don't know how definitive this study was, but the average time spent reviewing a CV is 7.4 seconds. I admit I don't read a whole CV, but even that feels a bit short. But either way, it's not going to be long. You've maybe got 1 minute for someone to make an assessment. There's an advert on TV at the moment for an electric car where they talk about you making an impression in 7 seconds. And I generally agree with that. So that's a tall order. And again, there's the resume, but then there's approach, and that's why there's another part to this, not just here's a good CV, good luck. But essentially, just take away from that thing is you don't have long to make an impression. So we've gone through that in terms of how many pages. This might seem a bit ridiculous for some people. I can safely say that I've seen all of these things on resumes, and it's bloody scary. Especially even more scary when the person works in security, which is just ironic. Typically, this isn't from people generally in Australia. It tends to be from people overseas. But either way, just for clarification, you don't need your passport. But that's obvious. But essentially, you don't need your full address. You can keep that a bit more obscure in terms of suburb or state, because the reality is, who cares where you live? These days, it doesn't really make much of a difference, especially if it's a remote role. And you definitely don't need personal information like date of birth. And these things genuinely come up on local resumes, not just international. So keep your data to yourself where you can. Not going to read all this stuff out, but I'll leave you to sort of have your eyes on that. But essentially, here's some sort of highlights. I did a survey some time ago with a bunch of CISOs, essentially asking for a bit of feedback on good or bad CVs. And there's some things I've highlighted there in terms of first impressions matter, and I could not agree with that more. So I think what's really important is having like a good opening summary on your resume. So essentially, what's your intention? What are you applying for, and why? The why is really important. So if you can sort of demonstrate that and articulate that, and that's the other thing about a short resume is being able to communicate, because you may have 10 years, 20 years experience, maybe you're transitioning brand new into cyber, but communication is a really, really important topic and skill to have in this industry. So as technical as some of these talks and stuff may be in the roles like pen testing and other stuff, communication is massive, and I'm sure 3, 4, 5 people mentioned that yesterday in this room. So for me, there's 2 skills that are integral to any role in this industry, and that's communication and the ability to influence. Because you could be the best hacker, but if your report is not good and you can't articulate what the findings mean to that organization, then what's the point? You could be an average pen tester, but you could tell the business these are the vulnerabilities, and the reason why they're important is because these are exposing this information here or this data, or you're a director and you're liable, and basically this is the impact to you personally or to the organization. Oh, suddenly that makes a difference. Just telling someone, and once I had someone send me their CV and they did like a dummy report, like a bug bounty report. And the guy just listed like OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. And I said, like, great, but what does it mean? And it's business language, it's communication, it's the ability to articulate, and it's a real skill. If you can manage to articulate your points and clarification in a short document like a resume, then it's sort of like it's not a said thing, but it's just a way of you being able to demonstrate your ability to actually be concise with your communication as well. Yeah, so spelling errors, they definitely still happen. Things like Grammarly or just getting... Sorry, Siri is listening. But just getting someone else to look over it as well is really helpful. So that second bullet point there, that was exactly the one I was referring to there. I really like this one about delete words from a CV, and I think just in general it's actually good practice. If you can, you've got a sentence or something you're saying, but you can take certain words out and essentially have more space and less words, and you still have the same impact. Again, it's showing that ability to communicate. For me, that's sort of the key takeaways there. And if anyone wants these slides after, I'm really happy to share them to you personally. So one thing that I'm really passionate about here is a competitive advantage. So the reality is when you're in this industry, stuff comes to you. There's never been so many jobs. It's a really weird thing. Like someone could be really grafting and grinding for honestly years to get into this space. And then they get there and they're 6 months into the job and suddenly stuff comes to them. And it's just ridiculous just because they have the job title now. Until you get to that point, or unless you're progressing in your career and you want more sort of leadership and senior stuff, it does get competitive again. You need any advantage possible. So cover letters, they can be divisive. Some people will tell you not necessary, but for me, I think they are, because if I'm applying for a role and David's applying for a role and David sends a CV and I send a CV, they're pretty similar. But my CV comes with a cover letter and basically explains, I want to work at Seek, and these are the reasons why I want to work at Seek, and the role you've got advertised, I think I'm great for that because of these reasons. 5 minutes, thank you. Then immediately they're assessing me more than just on the actual CV itself. Modern looking resumes, I think, are really helpful. Again, it's something that's maybe a bit nicer on the eye than just a Word or PDF sort of or Word print version. There's some really good templates on places like Canva.com, and there's some others as well. So free templates, they've got thousands of these things. I've been asked a question before about photos. No, you don't need them. Some people feel like they can lead to some sort of bias one way or the other. My personal opinion is do what you feel comfortable with. So on these templates, there will sometimes be a photo. You do not need to replace that with your own. Obviously, take the one off if it's not you. It's just a bit weird. Network is massive. The ability to leverage a network. So coming to something like this is awesome. I can't remember who said it yesterday, but there was some really good, I think maybe Cheryl yesterday afternoon, who said about going to events and stuff and then taking some notes of the names and things like that. That's bloody awesome, because it's hard to, if you spoke to 20 people today, it's hard to remember stuff. So a thing that I used to do is I'd speak to David, I would then on my phone just take some notes from that conversation and just walk off, and then it's done, I've saved it, and then keep doing that throughout the day. It's hard to remember all the conversations, a lot of things going on. But then you can then go back to that person next week and then try and connect with them on LinkedIn, and then you may see them at a meetup another time or another event somewhere else, and it just helps building that momentum and network. And every time you go to somewhere like this, then you know more people next time, and before you know it, you've been doing this for 2, 3, 4 years, and you can walk around and bump into a crap load of people, and it's such a nice thing to do. But the network itself, for me, that's how you can get a job. Not using people, but essentially, you meet someone today and you have a good conversation, and you're not talking about jobs, but you're exchanging information on what projects you've been working on or what your interests are. And that's that. Then maybe you bump into them at a meetup at some point, and then that happens 2 or 3 times. And then at some point, maybe their company's then hiring. And then they think, that person, they're cool, I like them. They may not be doing the job, but that would be a really good fit for our company. And then that's how a lot of jobs happen in this industry. I don't know a percentage because there is no official percentage, but a lot of jobs happen, a lot of hiring happens that's never advertised. So a lot of jobs, essentially transactions in terms of people getting jobs, where even us as a business, there's a lot of jobs that happen that we hire for customers that never see the light of day, because we know our network, we're going out to the people that we know. So any way we can leverage a network, and leverage for sounds the wrong word, but utilize, maybe is a better one, is helpful. And a proactive approach, which is what I'll talk about. And what that means in terms of LinkedIn messages and thank yous is if you interview for a role, following up with a message to the hiring manager, not begging for anything, but essentially just a thank you, just a complimentary email, and you look forward to hearing some feedback. Or send them a LinkedIn connection request. Again, it's a bloody small place, this industry, and people move around different companies, and the person you may meet today could be your future boss. You just never know. So being polite, doing things, again, any advantage to stand out over someone else is going to help you. I've talked about the cover letter, so I won't go into that because I'm very conscious of time. So for me, these are the main things. If you want a good CV, that makes sense. So essentially, you want to grab the reader's attention. You want to be able to very quickly identify to them why you're applying for the role and why you're relevant for the role. Examples, outcomes, information. So these, again, you can work in 2 roles, but it's what you did in those roles that counts. So even if it's the same job title, it's the experiences that you have that determine essentially what you did. So don't list the nice long list of responsibilities. List the outcomes, the achievements. Where did you personally make a difference? What impact did you have? Demonstrate you actually have the skills, or what you're doing to prepare yourself to get the skills. I think, again, short, concise CV, really important. Spoken about a modern-looking resume on one of these sort of platforms. And definitely check grammar, because it's a small thing, easily done, but you want to make the best first impression. 1 minute to go. Okay, cool. That's a lot of words there, so I won't read through that. But essentially, asked the question before about hackathons. And similar sort of thing, if you get involved in the industry in any sort of way at all, and again, I still feel like going to a meetup or going to a conference is worth adding. Treat your resume and your LinkedIn profile the same way. You want to be found, which is something I'll go into as well. And this is just another point in terms of, if you've got no experience, people think, well, what can I actually put on there? Again, it's these things. Because the stuff that we do outside of work, where you spend your time, where you spend your money, that tells someone where your interests are, where essentially what you want to do. So again, you coming here versus someone who's not coming here today, you've invested your own time and money, you could be doing something else. That's worthwhile. Put it on your resume. And your LinkedIn. So you will be found by recruiters if you have enough keywords on your profile. So personally, we will go looking for certain types of skills. We'll look by job title, even though that's useless sometimes because job titles are really vague. For example, a security engineer could mean one of 10 different things or more. So, but there'll be certain skill sets that we look for. That doesn't tell me how experienced the person is. It just means they're coming up on our radar, and then we'll have a look at that person and see how relevant they are to our actual requirement. But you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself. So if you can get found, have a really good LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn do recommend all these different steps of how to have a full profile. Take the advice, because there's a reason for that. But keywords are really good, just like resume. Have a good sort of bio. Maybe you're not working in security yet, maybe you are, but maybe you want to transition to something else. Tell the reader what your intentions are. So again, it's a good way to sort of just let them know what you're doing, what you're up to, and where you want to get to. And then the job search itself. So you've really got 2 options. You've got the way that most people do it, in terms of, as I mentioned before, you essentially drop yourself into that black hole and see what happens. Or you can take it upon yourself to be a lot more targeted. So I was going to do a live demo, but I don't think there's enough time. But let's pretend I go on to Seek. Seek, I want to be a security analyst. I search security analyst on Seek. I find all the jobs where security analysts are. Okay, cool. Next thing is I know the companies. I'll apply for the role, but I can do more than that. So I'm trying to see if there's a slide. Yeah. So I will then go and basically find who the hiring manager is, and I will let them know I've applied for your role. So again, you don't have to be demanding, but you want to stand out. And you may, I think you've got 300 letters, I think, so you've got long to sort of declare how good you are for the role. But in a sentence or two, you can essentially tell them why you're right for the role or why you're interested in the role. And then they have the option, at least, to go to HR or go to talent acquisition and say, hey, can you check this person? Rather than rely on HR to tell the hiring manager. Because again, you're relying on someone who may or may not know what basically the hiring manager is looking for. Interviews themselves, really important that you basically prepare. A lot of people don't feel great doing interviews. Someone said it yesterday, and I really agree with them in terms of interviews. It's a conversation. So, for whatever reason, people generally feel like it's a one-way thing. The company's interviewing them, but it's not. It's two-way, because you're interviewing that company as well. If all goes well, you've got a decision to make. They're going to offer you the job, and you're going to choose: do I accept that role? Do I want to work at that company? So to make that sort of decision, you need as much information as possible. So an interview process is an information gathering exercise. To have questions, essentially, is it the right company? Is it the right culture? Are they nice people? What does the sort of career opportunities look like? And it's tough, because when someone's trying to transition into a new area, they might feel more desperate than someone who isn't, who's already just moving within the industry. But you have value to offer. It's important, one, that they know that, but also that, again, you make that decision that you don't regret that decision in 6 months or 12 months just because you want to get your foot in the door. There will always be more opportunities, but it's really tough when starting out because you may not know who are the good companies, who are the bad companies, or who are the good managers and who are the diabolical managers. Liam said it yesterday that he learned a good lesson through having a terrible manager. Ideally, you want to try and avoid those. And that's where your network is really helpful. What people do in the industry is someone applies, they see the company, they will contact their friend who works at that company and say, hey, what do you think of such and such? And you can do the same thing. So in a similar sort of fashion, I'm going to wrap up, but basically certifications was asked earlier, or question certifications. There are some really shitty certifications out there that are a complete waste of time, waste of money, and it's because certifications company want to sell you something. They want to sell you the dream, and the reality can be something different. Certifications can be valuable. It depends on what you want from them in terms of the outcome. Is it learning, or is it a job? The reality is there's hardly any jobs that will get you, a certification will get you. What you can do is take the same thing, as I mentioned before, about reaching out to people is, okay, who on LinkedIn in my area has that certification? Reach out to them, say, hey, I see you've done that certification, I'm looking at myself, what do you think? If you ask 10 people or 15 people, you'll get a good idea of what the average opinion is. Because you may find out that was the best thing to do ever, or avoid because that's a waste of time and money. So hopefully it's helpful. If anyone wants those slides, I'm more than happy to share. And if we're not connected and you ever have any questions, just reach out.